Am I really gonna defile this grave for money? Of course I am!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Just had myself a day today. Went out surfing, went to check out this film. So I'm gonna probably power down after this because I've had a bit of a day today. Um, but I went to check out this. I was morbidly curious to check this out, or not morbidly curious, but what's the word? I was kind of curious. I'm not morbidly curious. That was the wrong word. And well, uh, it is definitely something of a topic. I just came back from watching it, so. But that film that we're going to be talking about today is The Drama, which was written and directed by Christopher Bigel. I think that's how you say his name. I think I butchered that name completely. Apologize, I didn't look it up before I recorded. I believe it's also edited by him as well. You guys may be familiar with him because he also his previous work with A24 actually includes Dream Scenario, which starred Nicolas Cage, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit. I actually saw that a few years ago. So now he's working with A24 again, this time with Zendaya and Robert Pattinson, as well as some other faces here and there. I think one of them was from the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, I believe. But this centralizes on Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. They are a couple who are planning their wedding, and they, are doing all that they got to do. Robert Pattinson's writing up a speech. Zendaya is, trying to make it less so, performative. Trying to make it feel more natural, feel more, just whatever speaks to them. Doing all that couples do, to try to get their wedding planned to their satisfaction. And then one night, they, with their best friends, or at least their, I guess like couples, talking to other couples. I don't know, like what their relations are. I guess they're friends. But they get to talking one night, and they get a little. Zendaya gets a little drunk, and she divulges a secret because they all start talking about secrets amongst each other in a kind of a playful way, and Zendaya drops a very specific kind of secret that initiates a string of events of a mounting of tension and lots of anxiety over the concern of what was procured or was divulged by Zendaya's character, and that's the crux of the movie, is about that specific secret and the moral framework of learning such a secret. So, and to also say upfront, also this is mainly through the perspective of Robert Pattinson's character. So we're seeing it through his point of view upon hearing such a thing, and then seeing how he takes that on, and again the moral framework within that, what it means to learn something, and how does that affect you, and how does that affect the relations that you have with the people around you. For some people, like in this movie, they are very blunt. They're like, absolutely not, need to detach. And then for some other people, it's more nuanced, and they are looking at it more objectively and not just, meeting with that criticism, at the start. And I won't say exactly what it is, what the secret is, because that, I believe, is the point of the movie to some extent. Because upon knowing that information, I feel as though that it takes away from the experience of what they're getting at with this specific film. But to speak, because my main my main points are going to be about that subject, and at some point I probably will address it, just because, I think that, for making my points more well known, I feel like I will need to address it at some point. But for now, you're safe. I will eventually tell you spoilers, when we get there. But for now, you're safe. So to speak around that for a second, um, I think that that has a very strong sense of engagement for me, because I think that the way that they handle the premise, there is tension there. There's a very anxiety-inducing environment that is crafted, um, and I think it's extended from what was Dream Scenario, because my memory of Dream Scenario is very vivid, so I won't sit here and say that I remember it entirely. I've only seen it once, and that was a few years ago. But I can recall it having that kind of feeling to it, where you can feel the anxiety brewing, and this is absolutely that. And a lot of that stems from, the subject matter, from what is divulged from Zendaya's character, and that being the jumping off point for the story. But upon that, and within, within the performances and within the overall structure, within how it chooses to supply information, there's a lot of quick cutting, that happens in the movie, that's also very much in relation to the director's previous work. um, and it creates, again, that tension, and also breeds a specific style that seems very apparently so linked to the director. It seems as though this is kind of his style now, or at least it may be his style upon future movies. I don't exactly know. But you also get a solid ensemble here. I think Robert Pattinson's great. I mean, I've always admired. He always plays, characters lately where there's like something offbeat to them. But in this case, you get why he's feeling that way. You get why he is coming across the way he is. Zendaya's fine. I mean, I've never been that impressed with her. I mean, she is who she is. She doesn't really go out of her way for her performance, but I mean, she does commendable work here. I can see, at points where she's clearly not wanting to say stuff, and then clearly is feeling detached, from her partner. And because the whole movie, is, as much as it is also the moral framework of learning information, it's also you know, the nuclear, the nuke that can jeopardize something such as a marriage, or as a companionship or a relationship. And upon knowing that information, upon knowing, and because going into this, I know that it was supposed to be also humorous. It's not meant to be taken, as much as it's called the drama. It's also meant to be. It's meant to be funny, and there are a lot of moments in this that are twisted, but funny. Like they deliver. There's points where I won't. There's a point in the trailer you may have seen where Zendaya and Robert Pattinson's character go to a photo shoot, and there's something that happens, and I won't really say what it was, but let's just say that there's a younger version of Zendaya's character that comes about throughout the movie. That specific point of when they choose to show a certain illustration, it made me laugh, and it made me go, like, out loud. I just said, "Oh wow, you're wrong for that." I just said that out loud. I was just like, "Wow, you're wrong for that." It takes a bold swing, and I think that in the vein of mainstream culture, it's rarely seen. You don't see people in this sort of area occupying these kinds of actors with a notable studio at this point, like A24, kind of taking a very bold swing like this. Um, so a lot of that I commend the movie for. Where I start to have my doubts is a lot to do with the subject matter. And I think that this is probably going to be a conversation for a lot of people. And I had a conversation with someone after the movie was done. I had a conversation with someone about it. And my feeling about it, and this is where we get into spoilers, so just FYI, this is spoiler territory right now. So the secret that Zendaya tells everybody is that when she was 14 or 15 years old, she had the idea to do a school shooting, and she had a weapon on her. She had a weapon because her father was apparently a military veteran, and she indulged in that. She was, just enamored with that idea. As a young person, it wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was like she obsessed with school shooters and obsessed with this idea. And when you know that information, when that information is supplied to you, and you realize that that is the point of the story, that is going to be the central thesis, or the subject matter to occupy that general thesis, it does create some level of doubt. And my feeling about it is twofold. On one part of it, I do feel that it does dip its toes into the vein of self-indulgence. I do think that it does use the subject matter as a way to exaggerate its point, because if there was any other way, it sounds kind of messed up, but if there was any other subject that they had used, the power of the message would not have delivered as much if it were done in any other way. If this was like a subject matter of like cheating, or a subject matter about grief or depression or anything like that, it wouldn't elicit a strong response as much as something like this does. So I get why they're doing that. But in that understanding of that is where my doubts are. I just don't know if I feel that addressing such a sensitive topic is warranted in that vein, especially when they are dipping their toes into the vein of self-indulgence, when they're having to show the young version of Zendaya's character and her like holding that gun, and she's like idealizing school shooters and stuff like that. It gets to that place where you're like, does this feel appropriate? And again, I'm kind of shocked, that a major studio like A24 is willing to put this out, especially against Mario. I found that kind of weird. It's like, yeah, perfect. This movie and Mario makes perfect sense to put out on the same weekend. Makes perfect sense to put up against each other. But even though I have my concerns about that, my response to it, that overall response that I'm having right now, I feel it's exactly the point in what the film is after. In that is exactly how the characters are responding to this. The sensitivity is around that subject, and that how they are choosing to collect that, how they're choosing to take that on, is very similar to my experience of watching the movie, to where I just was very anxious about Zendaya's character, and what may or may not trigger her, and what may cause her to go to that place, and if she may in fact do that sort of thing throughout the movie, and just the overall anxiety within the situation itself. Like, I get why it is that way. I totally get that, and I get the point. The point is that itself also. I get that. I just have my doubts upon utilizing that subject. I just feel like that there might have been another way to deliver this message that doesn't have to go to that specific place, if you get my understanding. But generally, I enjoyed it. I mean, I really commend, for the boldness in its concept. It's not exaggerative too, which I appreciate. It's not like there's no point in the movie where there's a shooting. And I'm glad they didn't do that, because I feel like that would have. I mean, I feel like this already is going to have some kind of controversy to it, just because of the subject itself. But that would have really triggered a lot of people, I feel, if they had pushed for that way, and it would have diminished the character, Zendaya's character, absolutely. And just the general conceit of what the movie is after, I feel like it would have just diminished it quite a bit. But you get good performances there. You get a strong sense of engagement. You're just anxious like the entire time watching it. But I just feel that there's a shade of concern That's always there for me when watching it, with the utilization of its subject matter. But it's twisted, it's funny, it's tense. Like it's a comedy packed within a thriller, and it's fun, and it's very, very enjoyable. But I feel that my concerns about its subject matter, and my overall understanding of its rationale, it just creates a certain level of doubt for me. And generally with the filmmaking itself, I mean, it's good, but it's not the kind of thing that like makes me so enamored and so engrossed. I'm more invested by the boldness in its concept. And I can appreciate that to a certain extent. But again, I do have my doubts upon using that subject at all. So generally, I did enjoy it, but I just have my doubts about if the choice in the subject made absolute sense. In some ways, it does. In other ways, maybe it's just my sensitivities. I don't know, but I feel as though there might have been another way to attack to attack it and get the same response. But maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the drama. I thought it was good. And again, really surprised. A major studio out there. I mean, it's not a major studio, but given their stance in Hollywood and just everything like that, I'm just surprised that in the mainstream front, something like this is out there. So you guys, what are your thoughts on the drama? If you guys plan on seeing it, definitely interested to know your guys' thoughts. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.